history's greatest puzzles, isn't it? Entire civilizations that built these incredible, complex worlds, only to just vanish. They left behind these hauntingly silent cities and, honestly, way more questions than answers. In this explainer, we're going to dive into the stories of 10 of these incredible, mysterious collapses.
We usually imagine the end of an empire as this huge, dramatic, fiery event, right? A final, epic battle, a city being sacked by invaders. But that's not always how the story goes. Not even close.
For some of the most advanced societies in all of human history, the end wasn't some climactic, loud bang. It was more like a quiet whisper, a slow, almost invisible fade into nothing.
And what makes these stories so totally captivating is that there's no smoking gun. Archaeologists are left with these little clues, but no single clear reason why they just disappeared.
The people just left. They literally walked away from magnificent cities, leaving their homes, their temples, all of their monuments behind, just to be swallowed up by time. So the big question is, why?
So, first up, let's look at the civilizations that weren't beaten by an enemy army, but by a much older, much more powerful force, nature itself.
Okay, let's start with the Indus Valley Civilization from about 5,000 years ago. What is just staggering about them is how modern they were. Their cities were these absolute masterpieces of urban planning. I mean, we're talking private bathrooms? That's something that wouldn't be common in parts of Europe for thousands of years.
And right there, that's the heart of the mystery. You have this incredibly sophisticated society that's focused on its people, and then they're gone. There are no signs of a huge war, no evidence of a massacre, just empty cities.
Well, the leading theories all point to the environment. Evidence suggests a massive shift in the climate, that the monsoon rains they depended on just stopped coming. Their rivers dried up, forcing a slow, gradual migration over generations. And their final secrets? They're still locked away in a language we can't read.
And you see this pattern over and over again. The Maya, who built those iconic towering pyramids, crippled by one devastating drought after another. The ancestral Puebloans abandoned their incredible cliff dwellings for pretty much the same reason. Even the mighty Khmer Empire, who are masters of water engineering, saw their amazing, complex systems fail, leading to their downfall.
But nature wasn't always the villain in these stories. For our next group, the end wasn't a sudden dramatic collapse. It was a slow fade. They were overshadowed, absorbed, or just kind of became irrelevant over time.
This timeline shows a totally different kind of ending. For the Nabateans, the people who carved the magnificent city of Petra right out of the rock, their decline started when the Roman Empire took control and shifted the big trade routes they relied on. A similar thing happened to the powerful Aksumite Empire in Africa. But for the Etruscans in Italy, well, their story wasn't about economics at all. It was about being assimilated.
See, the Etruscans didn't really fall in the way we usually think of it. They were the main power in Italy before Rome was a big deal. But as the Roman Republic grew and grew, Etruscan language, their culture, their entire identity was just slowly swallowed up. They didn't vanish. They just dissolved into a new rising empire.
All right, our final category. This is where we get into some of the most profound mysteries of all. These are the civilizations whose iconic ruins and sudden endings have been puzzling historians for centuries.
So way before the Maya and the Aztecs, there were the Olmec, often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica. And their most famous legacy? These colossal stone heads. Some of them weigh 50 tons. Who were they supposed to be? We just don't know. And by 400 BCE, their great cities were already empty.
Okay, now I want you to imagine this. In the heart of North America, around the year 1100, there stood a city called Cahokia. It was a sprawling metropolis, the center of the Mississippian culture, and its population was as big or maybe even bigger than London's at the time.
And yet, just a couple hundred years later, it was a ghost town. It probably wasn't just one thing. Instead, scholars think it was a perfect storm of factors. Environmental stress, social unrest, and maybe even new diseases that caused this great city to just empty out.
Now, for our last example, I want you to just focus on this one date. Around 1200 BCE, the entire eastern Mediterranean world was in chaos. But for one civilization, the Mycenaeans of ancient Greece, the heroes of the Trojan War legends, the end was incredibly swift and total. In the span of a single generation, their great palaces, their fortresses, their centers of power, all of it was destroyed. This wasn't just them either. It was part of this huge event called the Late Bronze Age Collapse, this mysterious cataclysm that brought down empires all over the region. Palaces fell, writing was forgotten, and Greece was plunged into a dark age. A whole world was just wiped off the map.
So, what do we take away from all these stories? From these cities reclaimed by jungles and empires lost to the sand? I think there's a really powerful lesson in all of this.
They're this profound reminder of fragility. It doesn't matter how advanced, how powerful, or how permanent a society might seem. It's always vulnerable to change, whether that change comes from the climate, from its neighbors, or from inside its own walls.
Their stories really challenge our whole idea of history. They show us that the end doesn't always come with the clash of swords and the thunder of armies.
Sometimes, the most powerful empires in the world just fade away, leaving behind nothing but echoes and a silent warning for all of us. The past is just filled with these incredible mysteries, waiting for us to explore them. If you found this as fascinating as I did, make sure to subscribe for more explainers on the hidden corners of history. Thanks so much for watching.